And good evening as we come on the air in the West tonight. And we begin here with the breaking headline this Friday evening, the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the second woman on the nation's highest court and a pioneer of women's rights and gender equality. We learned she died surrounded by family in Washington, D.C. Nominated by President Clinton in 1993, she remained the anchor of the liberal justices on the court. Ginsburg has had a number of health challenges in recent years, valiantly fighting them and each time returning to the court. But of course, tonight we have learned she passed away from complications of pancreatic cancer. She was 87 years old. So tonight here, we look back at her life, her legacy on the court, and what this now means just 46 days until the presidential election. Our team is standing by for you tonight, and we begin here with ABC's Juju Chang and Justice Ginsburg, the indelible mark she left on the court, on the country, as a quiet but often fierce member of the court.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a force to be reckoned with.
All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks.
Barely 5 feet tall, but a liberal giant. Only the second female justice named on the Supreme Court, serving there for more than a quarter century. Her path to the highest court in the land was not easy. As one of the few women at Harvard Law School, she faced discrimination after graduating from Columbia in the 50s. Her tenaciousness in the classroom highlighted in the Oscar-nominated documentary on Ginsburg titled RBG, produced by journalist Julie Cohen and Betsy West.
She was one of 9 women in a class of 500. She was tied for first in her class. And the big New York City law firms just weren't hiring women.
Not a law firm in the entire city of New York bid for my employment.
Charging forward, she became a beloved law professor at Rutgers and worked as a lawyer for the ACLU. She mapped out a legal strategy to file lawsuits against gender bias in employment, housing, and government benefits.
Men and women are persons of equal dignity, and they should count equally before the law.
You won't settle for putting Susan B. Anthony on the new dollar.
When they would say things like this, how did you respond?
Well, never in anger, as my mother told me. That would have been self-defeating. Always as an opportunity to teach. I did see myself as kind of a kindergarten teacher in those days because the judges didn't think sex discrimination existed. Well, one of the things I tried to plant in their minds was think about how you would like the world to be for your daughters and granddaughters.
She won 5 landmark cases, which she argued on behalf of women in front of an all-male bench long before she sat on it. Ginsburg went on to serve as an appeals court judge in the nation's capital until that life-changing nomination by President Bill Clinton in 1993.
I am proud to nominate for Associate Justice of the Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
That announcement may never have happened had it not been for the intense lobbying effort by a staunch feminist, her husband, Marty Ginsburg.
He really felt she was brilliant and she deserved it and it would be good for the country.
And at her confirmation hearing, chaired by then-Senator Joe Biden, the nominee did not shy away from her feminism, spotlighting contentious topics like abortion rights.
This is something central to a woman's life, to her dignity. It's a decision that she must make.
The Senate confirmed her in a sweeping 96-3 vote. She began quickly making her mark on historic cases. She's perhaps best known for a decision in 1996 that struck down a male-only admissions policy at the Virginia Military Institute, opening the door for women to study there.
It's Justice Ginsburg writing an opinion that builds on the foundations that lawyer Ruth Bader Ginsburg essentially helped to lay.
I know that there were some people who did not react well to the change, and my response to this was, wait and see. You will be proud of the women who become graduates of VMI.
And in a landmark case on employment discrimination in 2007, Ginsburg wrote a powerful dissent that prompted Congress to amend the laws. Named for the woman who filed the claim, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act became one of the first pieces of legislation signed into law by President Barack Obama. While on the Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg was a consistently liberal voice on issues like abortion, voting rights, and the separation of church and state. Off the bench, she was the first Supreme Court justice to perform a same-sex marriage ceremony. Her tenure was not without controversy, breaking tradition for a justice when Ginsburg spoke out against then-candidate Donald Trump, including to the New York Times, calling him a, quote, faker, saying, "I can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president." Ginsburg later adding that her comments were, quote, ill-advised, and that she regretted making them. But throughout it all, Justice Ginsburg won the respect of many conservatives with her grasp of the law and her carefully crafted opinion. And as the court shifted to the right, her scathing dissents elevated her to a pop culture icon, inspiring legions of young fans and feminists to emulate her famous outspokenness
25, 24, 23.
And her fitness routines, earning her the hip-hop-inspired nickname Notorious RBG.
Many varieties.
Her fame burnished by her fashion statements, her distinctive collars becoming her calling card.
And this is what I use for announcing majority opinion. This one is for dissenting opinion.
Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg helped focus our country on its most basic values of justice and equality, leaving a legacy of majority opinions and powerful dissents for generations to come.
Juju Chang on the life and legacy of Justice Ginsburg tonight. And I want to bring in ABC's Terry Moran, who's with us. He's covered the Supreme Court for years for us. And Terry, Justice Ginsburg, we know, was 87. This country aware of her health battles. She quietly fought them with dignity, returned to the court so many times. Obviously, the difficult headline this evening, her passing, surrounded by her family. And Terry, her influence on the court, on this country, can't be overstated.
It can't, David. You're absolutely right. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is a towering figure, a person of diminutive stature in many ways. And the word that comes to my mind when I think of her, this slight woman who looked like she might blow away in a big wind, is strength. She was a formidable legal intellect and a person of tremendous strength. And the reason she rose to such prominence, inspiring so many, infuriating others, I'm sure, is because she is one of those figures in our history, in American history, who expanded, sometimes against fierce resistance, our understanding of those bedrock American principles, those bedrock constitutional principles of equality and liberty. And she did so as a lawyer in which time after time, case after case, she slowly broke down barriers of gender discrimination that when you look at them today, you almost laugh at them. Ruth Ginsburg did that. And then on the court, she became really a lion of the liberal wing of that court in her later years, writing in memorable dissents, planting seeds, she hoped, against what is the conservative counter-revolution, against the expansion of some of those concepts. She will live forever in the law and also in American culture because she's such an all-American figure, the daughter of a Jewish immigrant from Ukraine and her mom from a family of immigrants. Her mom died the day before she graduated from high school, and she soldiered on again and again. She is a tough woman, a woman of great personality, of great character, a woman memorable if you ever saw her or met her, and a person who left her mark on American history.
Terry Moran with us tonight. And Terry, stick with us here. I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, as well. As I pointed out at the top tonight, John, this news comes just 46 days before the election, and I couldn't help but to notice on social media, Americans already reacting to the news tonight and somewhat upset by this discussion, already turning to politics and what comes next. But that's what happens when a story like this unfolds so close to a presidential election. And you've learned tonight, John, already that President Trump is expected to nominate a new Supreme Court justice in the coming days.
Multiple sources familiar with the president's deliberations on this say that they expect that the president will nominate a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, despite the fact that, as you pointed out, just 46 days to go. They expect this choice will be announced in the coming days. One name that is seen at the very top of the list is Amy Coney Barrett, a 48-year-old woman, to potentially be nominated to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Another name, Amul Thapar, is another name I have heard, who would be the first Asian American on the court. But David, this is about to explode onto this campaign as the central and most hard-fought issue. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a liberal icon. She's also a critical liberal voice on that court, has been. Replacing her would tilt the balance of that court for a generation to come.
And Justice Ginsburg knew that that would happen with her death, John. I want to bring in thank you for that, John. Let's bring in senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce tonight, because, Mary, this is now a big test, as John points out, for the Senate. What will happen, a divided nation, a polarized country, and every step the Senate takes will affect how their decisions are received by voters, really on both sides of this. You've learned tonight that the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, is already talking to Republican lawmakers about next steps to take here.
He is, David, and the Republican leader has been very clear that he is going to try and fill this seat, even though Republicans have potentially just 123 days to do this before inauguration. This is the opposite approach from McConnell's position in 2016, when he famously refused to even consider President Obama's pick, Merrick Garland, to fill Justice Scalia's seat. Now, at the time, 11 months before inauguration, McConnell said voters should decide after the election. But now McConnell says this is a very different situation, because unlike in 2016, now Republicans control both the Senate and the White House. Democrats, of course, blast McConnell's argument now as hypocritical. But, of course, Democrats have very little power here. It takes just a simple majority to confirm a nominee, and Republicans have that. The best tool Democrats have here may simply be to try and delay. That said, it is not a given that Republicans can fill this seat. Far from it. The big questions remain. Will Republicans have enough time to pull this off? And what will vulnerable Republicans do? There are a handful of moderate Republicans in tight races that could potentially be swayed to oppose the president's pick. Remember, it takes just 4 to flip and block whomever the president names. Senator Collins of Maine, Susan Collins, has hinted she might oppose, reportedly saying that she simply thinks it's, quote, too close to the election to try and fill this seat. And just today, before news of Ginsburg's death broke, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Maine reportedly said she will not confirm a new justice until after Inauguration Day. So this could be very close for Republicans. David, we could be headed for a real fight on Capitol Hill.
But again, to make this clear tonight, Mary, as you pointed out there, the Republicans in the Senate do have the votes, though, if they decide to move forward on this.
Republicans potentially have the votes. There is very little, nothing Democrats can do to block them.
All right, Mary Bruce with us tonight following this as well. I do want to bring this statement to the folks who are watching at home from Chief Justice John Roberts tonight. He said of Justice Ginsburg, "Our nation has lost a jurist of historic stature. We at the Supreme Court have lost a cherished colleague," he wrote. "Today we mourn, but with confidence that future generations will remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg as we knew her, a tireless and resolute champion of justice." And I do want to bring this back to Terry Moran, because in this moment, this polarized moment in this country, a lot of people are going to be turned off by the conversation turning so rapidly to politics, Terry. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was universally admired, really, on both sides of the aisle in Washington, and by conservative justices she shared that bench on the court with for so many years. Justice Scalia, she was a dear friend to, and Chief Justice John Roberts, obviously a conservative member of the court, with powerful words tonight for his colleague, a colleague that they are mourning the loss of.
That's a great point, David. The Supreme Court really is one of those areas, despite their disagreements, that does work together in a way much of America doesn't. She was much admired and beloved by many of her colleagues. Justice Antonin Scalia, who died back in 2016. They were very good friends. They were kind of an odd couple, the two of them. Opera lovers. They traveled together. They disagreed ferociously and sometimes took on each other in their opinions with what almost seemed like flaming on social media, but remained very close friends. And you're right as well that her intellect, there was nobody better prepared on a case than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a fine legal mind, and everyone respected that. And also, I think, had to respect her story. It is such an all-American story. Somebody coming, from New York City, not well-to-do, who managed, as I said, to change American history. The world looks very different for women and for all of us because of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and that ultimately is her legacy.
Terry Moran on Ruth Bader Ginsburg tonight. I want to get back to our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, and we're monitoring some of the reaction pouring in. Former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State as well, reacting tonight, saying Ruth Bader Ginsburg paved the way for so many women, Hillary included. She wrote in a tweet. Of course, we're waiting for word from President Trump tonight. Have we heard anything from the White House?
The president was giving a speech in Minnesota as the news broke. We have not heard it. We don't know if he's been informed yet. I assume we will hear very soon some kind of a statement. She was the liberal heart of the Supreme Court, but certainly an American icon and somebody who transcended politics. So I'm sure we'll hear a tribute from the president. But, David, this will very quickly turn to perhaps the most ferocious political fight yet of the year.
All right, and you'll be witnessing it for us, John Karl. Our thanks to you, to Terry Moran, to Mary Bruce tonight, our entire team standing by.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.